Hey there, if you're a veteran or you love someone who served, this next few minutes could save you a real headache this year. There's a change affecting VA disability payments right now, and if you don't know about it, you could either miss money you're entitled to or spend weeks confused about why your deposit looks different than you expected. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly why your payment amount changed, why the date it lands in your account might shift depending on the month, and one thing thousands of veterans are missing that could mean real extra money in your pocket. Every year, the VA adjusts disability compensation based on the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, the same inflation measure that adjusts Social Security. For 2026, that adjustment came in at 2.8% based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. The Social Security Administration announced this back in October of 2025, and the VA confirmed it would apply starting with payments dated December 1st, 2025. Here's where people get confused, and it's a small detail that trips up a lot of veterans every single year. The VA pays compensation in arrears. That means your December payment is actually covering your November benefits. So even though the new rate technically started December 1st, most veterans didn't see the increased amount reflected until their January 2026 deposit. If you looked at your December check and thought, wait, this doesn't look higher, that's exactly why. Nothing was wrong. It just hadn't caught up yet. Now, what does 2.8% actually look like in real dollars? It depends entirely on your rating and your dependents. So let's ground this with some real numbers. A veteran rated at 30% disability with no dependents is looking at a modest bump, but add a spouse and a child, and that same 30% rating pushes past $600 a month. At 50%, a single veteran is now receiving just over $1,100 monthly, while a married veteran at that same rating is pulling in over $1,200. And for veterans at the 100% rating, the highest tier, monthly compensation is now sitting at its highest point in VA history. The exact number depends on dependents, but we're talking close to $4,000 a month tax-free. That's an important word, by the way, tax-free. VA disability compensation doesn't get reported on your tax return, and it never has. If a tax preparer or software ever tries to count it as income, that's worth double checking because it shouldn't be there. You do not need to apply for the COLA increase. You don't call the VA. You don't fill out a form. You don't need to prove your disability again to get the adjustment. It's automatic, and it applies to every veteran receiving compensation, regardless of rating. If someone reaches out claiming you need to submit paperwork or pay a fee to receive your increase, that's not how this works. And it's worth being skeptical of anyone who tells you otherwise. Because automatic doesn't mean guaranteed to go smoothly. And this next part is genuinely the piece most veterans overlook. The VA doesn't send you a special notification when the COLA hits your account. There's no text, no email that says, hey, your payment just went up. The only way most veterans find out is by checking their own deposit or their annual award letter. That means it's entirely possible for the correct new amount to be sitting in your account and you never even realize your payment changed. Or more importantly, for something to go wrong with the deposit and you not catch it for months because you assumed everything was fine. Either way, the responsibility to verify falls on you. Before we go further, if you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps this information reach other veterans and families who need it. And I've got more of these updates coming. Now let's talk about payment dates, because this trips people up almost as much as the COLA itself. VA disability compensation is typically deposited on the first business day of the month. But when that first day lands on a weekend or a federal holiday, the VA shifts the payment earlier, not later. So if you're expecting your check on the first and the first happens to be a Saturday, your money likely showed up before the weekend, not after it. This trips people up every single year around holidays like Labor Day or Veterans Day, when banks are closed and folks assume their payment is late, when really it just came a few days earlier than they were watching for. If your bank is a smaller institution, you might also see an extra day or two of processing lag on top of that, simply because of how ACH transfers clear. None of this means something is broken. It just means the calendar shifts the number around a little. A veteran moves to a new state to be closer to family, opens a new bank account, and forgets to update their direct deposit information with the VA. Their old account gets closed. The next scheduled payment tries to deposit into an account that no longer exists, bounces back, and now there's a delay while the VA reissues the payment. sometimes by paper check, which takes even longer. This is completely avoidable. If you've moved, switched banks, or even just want peace of mind, you can log into va.gov, go to your profile, and update your direct deposit information yourself without calling anyone or waiting on hold. It takes a few minutes, and it can save you weeks of frustration down the road. First, check that the account on file at va.gov actually matches your current bank account. Second, if everything looks correct and the money still isn't there, call the VA directly. Having your award letter or your rating information on hand when you call tends to make that conversation faster. Now, here's something worth understanding if you have multiple service connected conditions, because it directly affects how much you're actually entitled to. The VA doesn't simply add up your individual ratings. If you're rated 30% for one condition and 20% for another, you're not automatically at 50%. The VA uses what's called a combined ratings table, which accounts for the fact that your body isn't 100% healthy to begin with. So each additional disability is calculated against your remaining, not your total capacity. It sounds complicated, but the practical takeaway is simple. Two smaller ratings on separate conditions often combine to something a little lower than you'd expect from just adding the percentages together. If your combined number ever looks different than your quick math, that's usually why, not an error. A significant number of veterans are currently rated lower than their actual medical condition would justify, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because conditions change over time, new medical evidence becomes available, or the original claim simply didn't capture the full picture. If your service connected condition has gotten worse since your last rating, or if there's updated medical documentation that wasn't part of your original claim, you can file what's called a supplemental claim to request a higher rating. This isn't starting over from scratch, it's building on your existing service connection with new evidence. Veterans who go through this process sometimes discover they've been underrated for years, and a jump from, say, 50% to 70% doesn't just mean a bigger monthly check. It can also open the door to additional benefits tied to higher rating thresholds, like increased dependent allowances or, at certain levels, additional support programs. This is exactly the kind of thing that's easy to put off because the current payment already feels like enough, but it's worth a conversation with a veteran service officer, especially if your condition has changed and your file hasn't been updated in a while. VSOs are free, they work for you, and they can help you figure out whether a supplemental claim makes sense in your situation. Your VA disability payment went up 2.8% starting with your January 2026 deposit, and that increase was automatic, so no application needed. Because the VA pays in arrears and doesn't send special notifications, it's on you to actually verify the new amount landed correctly rather than assuming it did. Payment dates shift around holidays and weekends, usually earlier rather than later, so don't panic if your deposit looks like it moved. And if your condition has worsened or wasn't fully documented originally, a supplemental claim could mean you've been underrated this whole time, and that's worth looking into with a veteran service officer. If there's one single thing to take away from everything we covered today, it's this. Don't assume your VA payment is correct just because it showed up. Take 5 minutes this week, log into va.gov, confirm your direct deposit information is current, and check that your payment reflects the new 2026 rate for your rating and dependents. That one small action protects money you've already earned through your service. You've spent years serving and sacrificing for this country, and the least this system owes you is a payment that's accurate, on time, and fully reflects what you're entitled to. Take care of yourself, look out for the veterans in your life, and I'll see you in the next one.